صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Sayyid Wahib, if you can close the door, please. Yeah, just to make sure that inshallah we'll officially start off the program. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, my dear brothers and sisters. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا الحسين. On this heavy and solemn night, the night of Ashura, we gather with broken hearts to commemorate the ultimate sacrifice of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, his family, Ahlul Bayt, and his loyal companions. To begin our programs and inshallah to bless our assembly, as always, we'll start with the recitation of the Holy Quran, and then it is followed by a couple of announcements, and then inshallah we're going to have our lecture by Sheikh Reza Hemyari, inshallah. With your loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Bismillah, I'll be reciting Surah Al-Fajr, the whole surah, page 593, if you want to follow on your phone, or you can also do this on the screen. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والفجر وليال عشر والشفع والوتر والليل إذا يسر. هل في ذلك قسم لذي حجر. ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد. إرم ذات العماد. إرم ذات العماد التي لم يخلق مثلها في البلاد. وثمود الذين جابوا الصخر بالواد. وفرعون ذي الأوتاد. الذين طغوا في البلاد فأكثروا فيها الفساد. فصب عليهم ربك سوط عذاب. إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. غفر الله لنا ولكم. May Allah accept our amal, recitation, whatever we do in these sacred nights of Muharram, and especially as we continue our journey and toward Ashura, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala purify our hearts and give us more tawfiq to be in this illuminous path, inshallah. So before moving on actually to the lecture, we are honored to have Sheikh Reza Hemyari with us, and inshallah we're going to have the lecture, but please just pay attention to some announcements. Actually, announcement would be the A'mal for the night of Ashura, inshallah, immediately following Maghrib prayers tonight. A'mal will be led by Sayyid Hassanain upstairs in the library, inshallah, after Maghrib. Yeah. And then, inshallah, for the day of Ashura and Sham Qariban, we have programs tomorrow. Inshallah, tomorrow morning the program will be started at 9:30 a.m. in the Al-Mustafa Hall, in this hall, for the English and Urdu program, inshallah. And we're gonna start the program with the A'mal, and you can see the details in the posters. And for the Sham Qariban, inshallah, tomorrow evening the combined Urdu and English program will take place right after the Maghrib prayers, also located in this hall, inshallah. So after Maghrib. And we have two upcoming programs this week. We're going to have Farsi Majlis, inshallah, this coming Saturday on on Saturday, June 27th, there will be a Farsi majlis, inshallah, at 6 p.m. inshallah مجلس به زبان فارسی تماما inshallah ساعت 6 عصر روز شنبه. به امید خدا در خدمت عزیزان هستیم. به امید خدا. And the other program on Sunday. On Sunday, the youth, it's a youth collaborative program. June 28th at 3 p.m. There will be a special collaborative regional youth afternoon titled Evading the Purpose, with Purpose, and Our Responsibilities in the Time of Imam Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. And this program features Sheikh Hussein Mullah and our dear brother Sheikh Reza Hemyari. This is a joint event hosting 4 communities: Hamilton, London, Scarborough, and Niagara. And inshallah, it will take place at 1310 Upper Gage Avenue in Hamilton. This is not in London. Inshallah, this is going to be in Hamilton. And the program will include Quran recitation, a panel discussion, a Q&A session, and dinner. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our amal these nights and devotion on this sacred night of Ashura. Please welcome my dear brother Sheikh Reza Hemyari to the member with your loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And brothers, please come forward a bit to make more space, inshallah, for the ones who are going to come afterward. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Inshallah, for your own marhumin and the marhumin of the rest of the communities, please recite a Surah Al-Fatiha masbughatan bis salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. A second louder salawat. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين إنه خير ناصر ومعين ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين سيما بقية الله في الأراضين وحجته على الخلق أجمعين. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى يوم الدين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد فقد قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي صدق الله العلي العظيم وصلوا على محمد وآله الطاهرين. If I can have the brothers just move slightly forward so that we don't have to interrupt, inshallah. There's plenty of space, please. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this is the last night of the series of majalis that we have been gathered here to commemorate. That is the night of the 10th, and tomorrow is the day of Ashura. In these nights we have been trying to figure out what exactly gives our lives meaning, and comparing that to what we are told and we are taught by our societies, maybe sometimes by our schools, our universities, our work, and how these two things compare and contrast. On the one hand, we have the teachings of Islam and how and what exactly gives sacredness and sanctity to human life. How is human life defined? What is a human being? And then on the other hand, how our society defines human beings. And last night we talked about what these human beings create when they come together. That we are in need of each other, and each one of our societies, one of our cultures, it defines those relationships and our priorities in a different way. And a lot of times we might think that this culture and this society in the West, it seems like it cares about human life more than our cultures in the East. But hopefully, inshallah, and this is not just the things that we've discussed in these past few nights, but we kind of see this on the news every day. And it breaks our hearts that these are other Muslims that are suffering in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Yemen, many years of famine that have brought so much suffering to the people of Yemen, of Syria, all of these Muslim countries. And it's unfortunately the Muslim countries that seem to take the brunt of these policies. I just want to mention, just to kind of put the icing on the cake, there was a recent study, maybe some of you had heard of it. We talk about humanitarian interventions. There's a recent study by this very famous medical journal, and it documented the effect not of outright war, but of sanctions. Sanctions that maybe some of our own countries back in the East have to suffer because of these international humanitarian interventions. The report says that in between the range of 2010 to 2021 or 2022, over 560,000 people were killed every year because of sanctions. Sanctions that, whether it's the EU or American sanctions that were placed against countries in the East. I know from personal experience, family members who could not have access to medical equipment, to medical aid that other people in the world can benefit from. These sanctions have seen a almost 300% or more increase from the 60s until 2022, according to this one study, from 5.4% to 24.7% of populations being under sanctions. Children under 5 are the death rates, this 560,000 deaths per year, 51% of those were children under 5. And then you have the people who are 60 to 80 being the next range of people who are most the most severely affected next. So we think about humanitarian intervention. We're not just talking about wars. We're also talking about sanctions. We're also talking about stealing wealth from entire nations that affects millions, if not billions, of people across the world. And we compared this to some of the teachings that we have in Islam. Now you might ask me, well, our Muslim countries in the East aren't much better. You know, you think about our cultures, you think about our societies, how much our governments maybe care about us, and so on and so forth. You might say, well, our countries are not much better. Yes, governments in one place of the world, they might cause more harm to people in other places of the world, but our governments maybe don't care about us much either. And so we have to ask ourselves, we as Muslims, when we come into this country, we might say that, well, some of these individuals who have not benefited from the lessons of Islam, I think sometimes I hear this in communities, and this is a fair point. Sometimes they have better Islamic akhlaq than we do in our own countries. They might be cleaner, they might be more responsible. Maybe we think about that in terms of time, they're on time, they are put their effort and they sacrifice and they struggle. And we might not see this in our own countries, in the East. Muslim countries, in countries with Muslim society. And so we think, well, what is it that Islam benefits us in terms of akhlaq? How does Islamic teachings benefit us in terms of the way that our societies are structured, and as well, how and where we find the value in human life? Now, I want to just mention one point here. A premise here is missing. That, yes, it is true that many of our countries, many Muslim majority countries, do have a lot of terrible, factors that surround them. But many of those factors are because of those same sanctions that I mentioned, those same policies that are imposed on them for years and years, that don't just affect you now economically or even politically, but change an entire culture. And once the culture is changed, once the people are made so poor, and we have this even in our ahadith, that once you make a people poor, then they're willing to do anything. And once that seeps into the culture, then it takes generations for that culture to rebound and come back to normal. So on the one hand, we have to realize that. And we have to take that into account. However, bad the policies, domestic policies are, the foreign policies also have an effect. We shouldn't downplay that. But then the second question is, how do we gauge, and this is the more important question, how do we gauge whether our values as an Islamic ummah and as a religion has an effect, and what that effect is? And I think there's a number of answers we can give to this. On the one hand, you have the religion and the culture and civilization of Islam, and then on the other hand, you have many examples of non-Muslim civilizations and cultures. How do we figure out which one gives us a better result? It sanctifies and understands human life to be more sacred. We've seen some of the effects, and we tried to say that we should have confidence in our own tradition because of the teachings. But how do we see it affect? Now, one way is by seeing it in larger society. And as I said, that is presented with many problems. We don't know, in other words, how much of the troubles and problems in our society is because of domestic policy, our societies, I mean Muslim majority countries, versus foreign intervention and foreign policy. So I think at least we can put that to the side right now. Another way of gauging, which I would like for all of us to reflect on for the few minutes that we have together, is by looking at what and who are our celebrities. Who do we look up to, in other words? Who are the individuals in our societies, in our cultures, not just who lived right now, but in our cultures, that we all look up to and we try to model our lives after? Who are our, in other words, celebrities? Celebrity comes from this word to celebrate. Who do we celebrate? In Western countries and in these capitalist countries versus in our Islamic civilization. There are different examples we can give. One example, I think, which is kind of in our face these days, much more than other demographics, are the wealthy. I've talked about wealth the past few nights, but I want to just point to the role models that the wealthy give us. And wealth in our societies, and it's not just, again, in the West, but also in the East, is increasingly being located and focused in a very, very small few. A few individuals have more wealth than the rest of the population. There are a lot of examples of this. I don't want to get into too many weeds, but if I can have a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And I can have everybody, again, take one more step forward. If we can actually have the brothers move a little bit to this way so the door is not blocked. Ahsantum. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sorry, so that we don't have to interrupt again. If I can, there's space over here. If we can just have people fill in those gaps so that we don't have to keep interrupting. Ahsantum, jazakallah. A final salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So on the one hand, we have the wealthy, and sometimes we think that, well, the wealthy, they deserve their wealth. They have worked hard, they can play hard. They have worked for all of the wealth that they have acquired, but then now they can use that wealth as they want. It's their money in the end of the day. And now, that's on one hand. The second thing is also that the wealthy can actually express their wants and their will more than the poor. In other words, they can bring out their true nature, their character, in a way that the poor can't. What do I mean by that? Well, if I am poor, I can't just go and buy whatever I want. I can't do or say whatever I want. But the wealthy, they don't have the limitations that a poor person has. They can do whatever they want, they can buy whatever they want, and they can say almost whatever they want, and they will get a pass. We've seen, unfortunately, na'udhu billah, these revelations that came out in the past few years. People who have no limitations, neither legal limitations nor monetary or anything else. And it is disgusting, it is horrendous, but it also shows the types of values that those people have. And if we look up to them in our society, then it also reflects the types of values that we have as a society. We have these examples in these words in many of our ziyarat. Not only the people who killed you, Ya Aba Abdullah, but also the people who supported that killing. And so, when you look in actually the statistics tell us that in the past 40 or 50 years, the economists tell us that productivity has risen, but wages haven't. Tell us that 1% of the population owns 34% of the wealth. 10% of the population owns 70% of the wealth. These are just the general statistics. There's a shrinking middle class. The middle class that many of these societies really held up high, and back 30 years ago, people could live a comfortable life. Now this middle class is shrinking. What you could buy with a regular income, an average income, 30 years ago, you can't buy a house, you can't buy a good car, and so on and so forth. This is all something that I think many of us feel. When you go to university, you have to pay more, and you come out with more debt. And you see that your universities, sometimes they are switching the funding from going from teaching to bigger and better buildings. I'm not talking about your local university here. I don't know about that. But I see my own university and some of the other ones that I've seen. They are switching from better teachers, bigger and higher wages for teachers, to better buildings. Think about the business schools versus the humanities departments. There's a growth in revenue, or rather, the revenue growth does not equal to the growth in the economy. People are growing richer and richer, even though economic growth is staying steady. And now the way that the wealthy members of our societies, back in the day, and I want to point to this, not just to kind of point out certain aspects of our society, but to think about what lives we look up to living. If we had all of the power in the world, to just blink of an eye, what would we like to be like? Who would we like to model our lives after? For many of us, we would say we want to be like those billionaires or the trillionaire that we have in this day. But what do their lives actually look like? First of all, back in the day, we had this idea of conspicuous consumption. That the more that you would consume, it's not just that you use more, but that you show how much wealth you have. So you would buy very beautiful and nice clothes. Think about the monocles, and the top hats that the cartoons used to show us, or the big bags of money, right? Or even, for example, the really fancy sports cars and the huge mansions. The idea wasn't just that you had the money, but that you showed other people how much money you had. So you bought there's actually an example of a person, a wealthy person, who buys not just gold, appliances, but he has a gold straw to drink his drink. You have a gold straw. You eat and consume gold. You can think of different examples that maybe you have seen. This is the ultimate value. Not just to consume, but to consume conspicuously, meaning consume in an obvious way, so that other people can actually see you and envy you. Nowadays, things have changed. We have gated communities. You can't enter into my community. We have people, the wealthiest man in the world, what type of clothes does he wear? T-shirt and jeans. Now, if you were to ask what type of T-shirt is that T-shirt is probably worth more than my car. Those jeans are probably worth more than maybe most or even a quarter of our houses. The shoes, all of this is actually designed so that it is inconspicuous, but the clothing is actually very, very expensive. The lifestyles that these people have are very, very expensive and very luxurious. And at the same time, they are very, very wasteful. It's said that, according to one book recently was published, said that these people, they have these yachts that consume so much gasoline. I don't know how many millions of barrels one yacht takes up. Think about all of the sort of the green movements that we have. Just one person can use and waste so much resources because he wants to show how much wealth he has. That's on the one hand. So on the one hand, these are people that we look up to. On the other, we see that they have so much wealth, and their wealth is actually built on top of the backs of the rest of the economy, the rest of the society. Revenue is not equal, the increase in income is not equal to the increase in economic growth. Many of these cases, these are not people who are producing more. These are actually people who are hoarding money, and they're inheriting that money from their parents or their grandparents. This is not someone, in other words, many of these individuals are not people who had actually been productive in society, according to at least many of these studies. And so you see that many of these families are actually very broken. The parents don't know who the children are, and they don't really care about their children. Just like they have conspicuous consumption, they also have conspicuous families. We want sort of people who make us look good in front of other people. I don't want to condemn others. I'm just trying to explain and describe how some people that maybe we value, even as Muslims, how they live. And then also another description. It is said that many of these people, they surround themselves by people who are not going to tell them that what you are doing is wrong, to criticize them. The people who surround these wealthy people, they don't want to have their wealth taken away from them. So they are surrounded by yes men. Whatever the master says, I say yes. Because if I say no, this person is so needy and so, na'udhu billah, prideful and proud, that if I were to even criticize them in the smallest amount, then they will take everything they have that I have away from me. So they have armies of butlers and servants. Do we need to move up a little bit? Okay. Jazakallah. If we can have the brothers move up a little bit. Ahsantum. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. More. There's some space still farther up. Ahsantum. And this is the picture that we get. So they're also surrounded by people who never are willing to criticize, the man in charge or the woman in charge. And then I don't even need to tell you about how meaningful many of these lives are, how much sort of depth of character many of these people, according to these descriptions, have. So you can just tell by the things that they spend their money on. Plastic surgery, cars, yachts, big houses, and so on and so forth. Chandeliers that are worth $150,000. And then once the divorce claims come in, then you have to figure out, well, how do I split this chandelier in half? $150,000 chandelier. Can you imagine what that might look like? This is the picture. Now, we have another example. And this is the example, despite all of the counter examples that you might give me. The example that we, particularly as the school of the Ahlul Bayt, uphold is the example of the Ahlul Bayt themselves. The Ahlul Bayt were not poor people. It is said that one day, Talha and Zubair, they criticized and they sort of downplayed Amir al-Mu'mineen's wealth. And it is said that Amir al-Mu'mineen took offense to this because they think that it is wealth that brings them power and prestige in the Muslim Ummah. So Amir al-Mu'mineen now shows that through his own efforts, it is said, Imam Ali, he was accused, لَيْسَ لِعَلِيٍّ مَالٍ. Amir al-Mu'mineen tells the people that would help him in gathering the date palms and all of the things that he had farmed and planted himself, all of those date trees that he had planted from his own hands. The people who were helping him collect those dates, he said, to bring all of the wealth that I have gathered in this last season. And it is said that 100,000 dirham was collected and brought in front of Amir al-Mu'mineen. وَقَدْ جَمَعُوا مِنْ ثَمَنِ الْغَلَّةِ 100,000 dirhamin. 100,000 dirhams. And then it is the same Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is our role model. You want to see how to compare our culture, our civilization with the civilization that maybe we are surrounded by. We look at the role models that we have. It is said that now Amir al-Mu'mineen, he disperses all of that wealth. It's gathered, recognized, and then Amir al-Mu'mineen gives it out to the poor. Amir al-Mu'mineen was not a poor man. But his strength and depth of character. It is said that one day Aqil, his brother, comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen. And Aqil, Imam Ali, this is mentioned in Nahj al-Balagha and as well other books like Amali of As-Saduq, with different wording, but the idea is the same. Aqil comes and asks Imam Ali for some assistance. This is the time when Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali, was the Khalifa of the Muslims. The previous Khulafa, they, in particular the third Khalifa, they would gather the wealth from Egypt to Iraq to Arabia, all of the wealth, the taxes that was gathered. It is said that during the time of the third Khalifa, they would come and bunch it up in front of the Khalifa. And the tribes people of the Khalifa, they would ogle and they would look at this wealth and they would sort of, their mouths would start to water, thinking, okay, how much of this can I get? And it said that he would disperse this wealth amongst his own tribespeople, buying people off, giving some nepotism here, there, and so on and so forth. So much so that ultimately it ends up with rebellion and revolt. The cause for the downfall of the third Khalifa was the nepotism and the wealth that he would gather from the Muslims, and then he would disperse amongst his own family, giving the governorship of this place or of that place to his own family members. And now, how is Imam Ali dealing with even the closest people to himself? In this hadith, in this khutbah number 221 or so of Nahj al-Balagha, you can go and see it. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I saw Aqil come to me with his children having ashen faces, almost as though his children were starving. Difficult lives. And Amir al-Mu'mineen says these words, Wallahi la'an abaytu ala hasak al-sa'adani muraqqada. That by Allah, if I have to spend the night on a bed of thorns, I have to sleep on a bed of thorns, and I have to be dragged through the streets, that is better to me, أحب إلي من أن ألقى في القيامة محمدا خائنا في ذي يتمة. That is better to me than if I were to go on the day of judgment and meet the Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. while I was disloyal towards even the orphan that Allah has placed under my care. أظلمه بفلسة متعمدا. Even with a small, we can think of it like a couple dollars. Even if $1 I have taken and I've done injustice to this orphan, then I would rather have all of these tortures befall me in this world. And so he says that I took a rod and I heated it up in the fire. And I just brought it close to the body of Aqil. He did not touch it. And Aqil, he jumps up. He says, what? He almost as though I have stuck him with the rod itself. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, you cannot last and withstand this amount of pain, and you expect me to give you priority, a priority that is going to cause me to fall into the hellfire in the day of judgment? Why would I ever make such a transaction? So on the one hand, Amir al-Mu'mineen is wealthy, and he has power over the lives of all of these Muslims and their taxes. And then on the other hand, he prioritizes justice and the yatmatin, the orphans. On the other hand, we think about the depth of character of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He is the warrior of every battle. He is the most powerful individual in all of the Muslim ummah. An ummah that stretches from the farthest lands in the east to the farthest lands in the west. And the Muslim ummah was growing and growing day by day. And yet it is this same Amir al-Mu'mineen who comes and he bows down to Allah. And we have the most beautiful ibadat that can only come from a person with the depth of character like Amir al-Mu'mineen. I don't need to give you too many examples. But one example we have in his munajat, that whispering that Amir al-Mu'mineen has to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mawlaya ya mawlaya. Anta al-mawla wa ana al-abd. Wa hal yarhamu al-abda illa al-mawla. Mawlaya ya mawlaya. Anta al-malik wa ana al-mamluk. Wa hal yarhamu al-mamluk illa al-malik. O my master, you are the master and I am your slave and your servant. Who will have mercy and compassion over his servant than the master? And so on the one hand, Amir al-Mu'mineen upholds justice in society, and then he has the depth of character to understand everything in his life is beholden and at the mercy of Allah. All of the power and the wealth that he has. But then at the same time, we say that Amir al-Mu'mineen, he is not going from one extreme to the other. He does not say, I forsake this world. When you look in Nahj al-Balagha, there's a very beautiful saying that the compiler of Nahj al-Balagha has. Sharif al-Radhi, he says in the introduction that I took pride when I would describe to other people around me at the different dimensions of the character of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sometimes I would tell them, look at the words of this man. And it was almost as though these were the words of someone who is out into the wilderness, a sort of a monk, a recluse, who has dedicated his life to worshiping Allah. But then at the same time, this is a man who was at the forefront of every battlefield. He was the leader of the Muslim Ummah. And it is this same leader who can combine these different characteristics into his soul that becomes Amir al-Mu'mineen. And I will give you one example. It is said that one day Amir al-Mu'mineen, he comes in front of, and he goes and visits one of his companions in the city of Basra. And he sees that this person has a wonderful mansion, a large house. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, he asks his companion, what type of house is this? Ma kunta tasna'u بسعة هذه الدار. What do you do with such a grand house? في الدنيا, in this world. ما أنت, what is wrong with you? إليها في الآخرة كنت أحوج. You are going to be more in need of the resources that you have placed in this house in the hereafter than you are going to need it in this world. But then he says, بلى إن شئت بلغت بها الآخرة. If you want to meet this house in the hereafter, you want to benefit from it in the hereafter, then place within it, host within it your guests. Bring together other believers, mu'mineen, into your company. وَتَصِلُ فِيهَا الرَّحِمِ, and bring together your family. Use it, in other words, this world and the blessings that God has given you for your hereafter. We think about it as well in terms of our community centers. Alhamdulillah, mashallah, you guys have a beautiful community center. But many places you might go to, people, individuals have wonderful, beautiful houses. And then when you come to their community centers, it's almost like an afterthought. Come once a year, and then the lights are out, the air conditioning is broken. The management committee has not told me to say this, but we just want to think about where our priorities fall. Every year we have to do fundraiser after fundraiser in the most crucial times, taking away from those moments of spirituality, because in the end of the day, if we don't fund it, then we're not going to have the centers open so that we can take advantage of that spirituality. We think about how grand and expensive our houses and our cars are, and then we think about where our community centers fall. How big and how much can they fulfill our spiritual and our community needs. Now we think about the example of the Ahlul Bayt. And the example of the Ahlul Bayt, we think about it as well in the journey of Aba Abdullah. I mentioned to you, the role models that we are given in this society, you compare them to the Ahlul Bayt, the role models of our Islamic civilization, our religion, and our source of devotion. You think about Aba Abdullah himself. It is said that throughout the journey of Aba Abdullah towards Karbala, Aba Abdullah was not just looking for a large army. He was looking for, even if it were a small band of men, but a band of men who are devoted to him, who are willing to sacrifice themselves for Aba Abdullah. Think about how that compares to the wealthy and the role models that we have. On the one hand, we have yes men, countries, entire countries who can spend their sovereign wealth funds on trillion-dollar projects and then after a few years they take a step back because the project was not going to work in the first place. And then you take the example of Imam al-Hussein. His family is coming along with him. You might expect that Aba Abdullah would go and, na'udhu billah, beg and plead for every individual in Medina and Mecca to come and follow him. And he might give them different oaths and different vows that you can get this place and you can get that place. But it is said that time and again, Imam al-Hussein would test his companions. He would turn off the lights in one moment. He would tell them that my allegiance has been taken off of you. And there were individuals who would take him up on that. Many individuals, I mentioned one of them the other night, Al-Dhahhak ibn Abdullah al-Mashriqi. It is said that Al-Dhahhak, he tells Aba Abdullah that, Ya Aba Abdullah, so long as the fight is with you, then I am going to be with you. But as soon as I see that my life is in danger and there's nothing going to be coming of this, then I am going to run away. And Aba Abdullah said, that is fine. You can have as much benefit as you want to take from this journey. And so it is said that even on the day of Ashura, when things were going against Aba Abdullah al-Hussein's camp, Al-Dhahhak, he flees away. Another man Ubaydullah ibn al-Hur al-Ju'fi. It is said Imam al-Hussein sees him on the path to Kufa. As the two camps are going, Imam al-Hussein proclaims to Ubaydullah, "This is my mission. Will you not come and join my camp?" It is said that Ubaydullah, he gives him his sword, his horse, and his armor. Imam al-Hussein says, "I do not want these things. I am asking for your allegiance and your pledge." He says, "I cannot pledge that. I cannot give my life." Imam al-Hussein tells him to go as far away as you can. Because anyone who hears my call in the plains of Ashura and does not heed that call, I have been told by the Prophet of Allah that he is surely going to be suffering the tortures of Allah himself. And so Imam al-Hussein has even mercy with this individual. And in multiple places, when his companions tell him, now is the moment that we can take advantage of the geography. Now is the moment when the army of Hur ibn Yazid al-Riyahi, they're just a few thousand. We can fight them and we can defeat them. Think about what a leader is and who Abu Abdullah and his mission is. It is said that Imam al-Hussein stuck to his principles. I am not going to begin this fight. I am not going to be the first one to cast my arrow or to bring this violence and this terror amongst the Muslims. I have a mission and I'm not going to veer from it. And so it is said that at different moments, Imam al-Hussein, he refused to take advantage of the moment. And he told his companions that if you feel like now is the moment for you to go away, what kind of a leader must he have been? That he would tell his companions to go away, and yet his companions, on the night before the day of Ashura, a night like tonight, his companions, one after another, when Imam al-Hussein, he tells the camp to turn off the lights. And he says to his companions, you take your own family members and you take the hands of each other and you go out into the wilderness. I have raised my allegiance from you. Your pledge is no more. It is said that Zuhair and Muslim ibn Awsaja and Habib and Abbas and Ali al-Akbar and all of the members of the camp, they all stand up and they repeat their pledge to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein. They say, Ya Abu Abdullah, where do we go? If in the morrow we are to run away from your camp, how can we face your grandfather Rasulullah on the day of judgment, telling him that we left your Hussein all alone in the plains of Karbala? If it comes down to it, Ya Abu Abdullah, we are willing to die 1,000 lives over, to be killed and to be brought back to life, and then to be killed once more for 1,000 lives. And even if our bodies are burnt and ripped to shreds, then Abu Abdullah, if Allah gives us the permission to come back to this life, we will give another life for you. And it is said that on the next day, each one of those companions who had pledged their allegiance to Imam al-Hussein had given and purified their intentions for Imam al-Hussein. They swore that not a single arrow will come and hit the body of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein or to any of the Bani Hashim, so long as they are alive. But it is said that at one moment, all of the companions as well had passed. And even all of the Bani Hashim had passed. Think about how great of a leader Abu Abdullah is. How much depth his character has. But as well, how much trust he has in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya ayyatuha an-nafsul mutma'inna. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. Allah is calling Abu Abdullah back to him. O you soul who is at peace and is tranquil, come back to your Lord. It is said that there was one final soldier left in the camp of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein when even Ali al-Akbar, Qasim, and even Abbas had given his life. There was one final sacrifice that Imam al-Hussein had to give, and that was in his infant son, Abdullah al-Radhi'. Can only imagine what must be going through the heart of Imam al-Hussein. He is coming to give his final farewells to the camp. And now he asks from his sister, Nawilini waladi as-saghir. Oh my sister, give me my son, my infant son, so that maybe I can say my final farewells. Hatta awadda'ahu. It is said in the different maqatil that the mother of Abdullah al-Radhi was also there on that day. But we can only imagine the state of Abdullah al-Radhi, Ali al-Asghar, that it is said that one after another, maybe he did not ask from the mother of Abdullah because he could not face his mother. Or maybe it is said that his state was so bad, his face had sunken in, that none of the women could bear to hold Abdullah al-Radhi for too long. His lips are parched. It is said that he can't even cry out. His body had grown weak. And so when Abu Abdullah takes him in his arms, there are two different reports, brothers and sisters. It is said that when Imam al-Hussein takes him in his arms, according to one report, he turns around and he goes to ask the enemy soldiers that if you are not going to have any mercy upon me, then have some mercy upon this infant son. If I have raised the sword against you, what has this young infant son done against you? It is said that Aliyun yataladha atasha. His body was squirming and his body was so weak that there was no more hope in his life continuing. And yet the enemy soldiers did not let that go to waste. It is said that as soon as he raises the body of Abdullah al-Radhi, an arrow comes and pierces the throat of Abdullah, and he is slaughtered. ذُبِحَ مِنَ الْأُذُنِ إِلَى الْأُذُنِ. In another report, brothers and sisters, it is said that as soon as Imam al-Hussein holds Abdullah al-Radhi in his arms and he comes to kiss those parched lips of his young infant son, he feels the arrow piercing the throat of Abdullah, and the head of Abdullah is cut from his body. And it is said that even at this moment, at no other moment do we have that Allah gives His azah to Imam al-Hussein. Allah tries to bring some peace to the heart of Imam al-Hussein except for this moment. It is said that from the heavens, this proclamation, it goes out. It says, Hussein, da'ahu fa inna lahu murdi'an fil jannah. That, oh Hussein, leave him where you are. Leave him because we will give him water. We will satisfy his thirst in Jannah. And so now Hussein, he does not know which way to go. According to some of the maqatil, Imam al-Hussein cannot take him back to the tent. And so he goes to the back of the tent. Each one of the shuhada of Karbala, Imam al-Hussein, he either brought him into the tent or he buried him in front of the tent. But how can he bring Abdullah al-Radhi and give him back to his mother? Or let Sukaina see the body of her brother. And so it is said that Imam al-Hussein goes behind the camp and he digs a very shallow grave. حَفَرَ بِجَفْنِ سَيْفِهِ. He digs a grave with his sword so that maybe he can protect the body of his young infant son, Abdullah. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ.
أبا عبد الله 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 عبد الله أبا عبد الله أبا عبد الله أبا عبد الله. MashaAllah, everyone. Abu Abdullah, Abu Abdullah, Abu Abdullah, Abu Abdullah, Abu Abdullah, Abu Abdullah, oh Abu Abdullah. عبد الله لا أغهواله شيدا يا أبا عبد الله أغهواله شيدا يا أبا عبد الله چشمها محو تماشای ابا عبدالله چشمها محو تماشای ابا عبدالله نور باران شود آنجا که همه میگویند نور باران شود آنجا که همه میگویند ذکر نورانی و آوای ابا عبدالله ابا عبدالله لا أبا عبد الله 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 لا چه شود عمر گران مایه ما طی گردد چه شود عمر گران مایه ما طی گردد در تولا و تمنای ابا عبدالله در تولا و تمنای ابا عبدالله ابا عبدالله أبا عبد الله 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 دل ز عشاق و محبان حسینی برده است دل ز عشاق و محبان حسینی برده است حرم و گنبد زیبای ابا عبدالله حرم و گنبد زیبای ابا عبدالله ابا عبدالله ابا عبدالله عبد الله أبا 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 عبد الله الله ثروت و مکنت شاهان به چه کارش آید ثروت و مکنت شاهان به چه کارش آید هر که شد خاک قدم‌های ابا عبدالله هر که شد خاک قدم‌های ابا عبدالله ابا عبدالله ابا عبدالله أبا عبد الله أبا عبد الله أبا عبد الله أبا عبد الله الله کاش گویند که در نامه اعمال همه، کاش گویند که در نامه اعمال همه پای آن حک شده امضای ابا عبدالله، پای آن حک شده امضای ابا عبدالله. مادرم گفت اگر در طلب عقبایی، مادرم گفت اگر در طلب عقبایی پای بگذار به دنیای ابا عبدالله، پای بگذار به دنیای ابا عبدالله، ابا عبدالله، ابا عبدالله، ابا عبدالله، الله ابا عبدالله، ابا عبدالله. امشب شهادت نامه عشاق امضا می شود، فردا ز خون عاشقان این دشت دریا می شود. امشب شهادت نامه عشاق امضا می شود، فردا ز خون عاشقان این دشت دریا می شود. عزیزانی که میتونن تکرار کنن، روی صفحه هم هست. امشب شهادت نامه عشاق امضا می شود، فردا ز خون عاشقان. ماشاءالله. امشب شهادت نامه عشاق امضا می شود، فردا یا می شود. امشب کنار یک دگر بنشست آل مصطفی، فردا پریشان جمعشان چون قلب زهرا می شود. امشب کنار یک دگر بنشست آل مصطفی، فردا پریشان جمعشان چون قلب زهرا می شود. امشب شهادت نامه ماشاءالله عاشقان این دشت دریا می شود. امشب صدای خواندن قرآن به گوش آید، ولی فردا صدای الامان زین دشت برپا می شود. امشب شهادت نامه عشاق، فردا ز خون عاشقان. امشب کنار مادرش لب تشنه اصغر خفته است، فردا خدایا بسترش آغوش زهرا می شود. امشب شهادت داز خون عاشقان شود. امشب کنار مادرش لب تشنه اصغر خفته است، فردا خدایا بسترش آغوش زهرا می شود. امشب که جمع کودکان در خواب ناز آسودند، فردا به زیر خارها گم گشته پیدا می شود. امشب شهادت نامه خون عاشقان این دشت دریا می شود. امشب شهادت نامه یا می شود. امشب رقیه حلقه زرین اگر دارد به گوش، فردا دریغ این گوشوار از گوش او وا می شود. امشب شهادت نامه فردا ز خون عاشقان. امشب به خیل تشنگان عباس باشد پاسبان، امشب به خیل تشنگان عباس باشد پاسبان، فردا کنار القمه بی دست سقا می شود. فردا کنار القمه بی دست سقا می شود. امشب شهادت می شود، این دشت دریا می شود. امشب شهادت نامه یا می شود امشب گرفته در میان اصحاب سار الله را، امشب گرفته در میان اصحاب الله را. فردا عزیز فاطمه بیار و تنها می شود امشب شهادت نامه عاشقان. این دشت دریا می شود امشب شهادت نامه عشاق امضا می شود. امشب سر خدا بر دامن زینب بود، امشب سر خدا بر دامن زینب بود. فردا انیس خولی و دیر نصارا می شود امشب شهادت نامه دریا می شود امشب شهادت نامه عشاق امضا می شود. فردا ز خون ترسم زمین و آسمان زیر و زبر گردد حسان، ترسم زمین و آسمان زیر و زبر گردد حسان. فردا اسارت نامه زینب چو اجرا می شود امشب شهادت نامه عشاق امضا می شود امشب شهادت نامه عشاق امضا شود. فردا ز خون عاشقان این دشت دریا می شود. فردا ز خون این دشت دریا می شود امشب شهادت نامه عشاق شود. آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن، آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن. این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است. انا فتحنا لک فتحا مبینا، انا فتحنا لک انا فتحنا لك انا فتحنا لك. اینا تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان این است. آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن، آید ز خیمه آن. این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است، این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است. انا فتحنا لک فتحا مبینا، انا فتحنا لک بینا، انا فتحنا لک. تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان. خوشبو شده شب با عطر یاران، خوشبو شده شب با عطر یاران. امشب شب قدر مناجات و نماز است، امشب شب قدر مناجات و نماز است. بر خاک سجده سرهای عشاق، بر خاک سجده سرهای عشاق. فردا به روی نیزه در راز و نیاز است، فردا به روی نیزه در راز و نیاز است. آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن، آید ز خیمه این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است، این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است. انا فتحنا لك فتحا مبینا، انا فتحنا لك فتحا مبینا، انا فتحنا لك اینا. تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان است. نورون علی نور این خیمه امشب، نورون علی نور این خیمه امشب، روشن شده از آیه های سوره نور، روشن شده از آیه های سوره نور. نورون علی نور این خیمه امشب، نورون علی نور این خیمه امشب، روشن شده از آیه های سوره نور، روشن شده از آیه های سوره نور. فردا ولی آه دود است و آتش، فردا ولی آه دود است و آتش، هر سوی صحرای ای افتاد مهجور، هر سوی صحرای ای افتاد مهجور. آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن، آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن، این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است، این نغمه زیبای یاران است. انا فتحنا لك فتحا مبینا، انا فتحنا لك بینا، انا فتحنا لك. تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان. شعر وداعت آتش به جان زد، شعر وداعت آتش به جان زد، شعر وداعت آتش به جان زد. دیگر مخوان طاقت ندارد زینب تو، دیگر مخوان طاقت ندارد زینب تو. تقدیر زینب صبر جمیل است، تقدیر زینب صبر جمیل است. انا الیه راجعون ذکر لب تو، انا الیه راجعون ذکر لب تو، انا الیه راجعون تو. آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن، آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن، این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است، این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است. انا فتحنا لك فتحا مبینا، انا فتحنا لك انا فتحنا لك مبینا. تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب فرمان حسین است. آید ز خیمه آوای قرآن، آید ز خیمه آن، این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است، این نغمه زیبای یاران حسین است. انا فتحنا لك فتحا مبینا، انا فتحنا لك مبینا، انا فتحنا لك. تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب فرمان حسین است، تاریخ از امشب تحت فرمان این است. یا حسین 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 یا حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر یا حیدر. یا حیدر 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 حیدر یا زهرا یا زهرا یا زهرا زهرا یا زهرا یا زهرا یا زهرا یا حسن یا حسن یا حسن یا حسن یا حسن یا حسن حسن یا زینب 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 زینب ابوالفضل 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 أين الطالب بدم المقتول بكربلاء أين الطالب بدم المقتول بكربلاء كل يوم عاشوراء كل يوم كل أرض كربلاء كل أرض وارث خون حسین مهدی زهرا بیا وارث خون حسین مهدی زهرا بیا یار مظلومان کی میرسی از راه یار مظلومان کی میرسی از راه العجل العجل یا حجت الله العجل جل یا حجت الله العجل العجل یا العجل العجل الأجل يا حجة الله صلى الله عليك يا مظلوم يا أبو عبد الله السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن وعلى أولاد وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى قلب زينب الصبور وعلى العباس جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وقائدا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طبعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد.